All right. Yay, it is week 12, the week we all head out to spring break. But I am going to go ahead and record a video before I get started with mine. And I want to tell Ven that he replied to week 12, which is actually, I think, a pretty good video talking about industry standards in JSON. And a couple of you have mentioned JSON. So I'm actually going to cover an example that I'm going to use, I think, for my code. My current code. Remember, in the past, I've done the RPS game, but right now, what I'm going to do is actually do my EV charging tracking app. So I'm going to leave this here, and I'll put on top of it the one I'm doing now. So if you want to hear more or know more about JSON and some other topics I talk about, check that out as well. But before I get into that, right, I've already sent out the email with the signups. Several of you have already signed up. So if you don't know, right, I sent an email yesterday. I also posted it on Discord. So if you missed the sign up information, check Discord or your inbox on Canvas. Cool. Now, even before I get into the JSON, just to tease it a little bit, maybe, I want to say this. I've made a decision. So last semester, and this is actually reflecting last semester's. Now I'm talking about after dev. Okay, so I know this, and I've been talking a little bit about how I was going to handle this, but the I always say this wrong. The graphical user interface, the last 3 weeks, I'm going to move up to starting after dev. Okay, after dev 1. So I'm going to redo this content before or sometimes in the beginning of my spring break is to do this. And we are dropping, let me say this, we are not going to do section 13, part of 14, 14, part of 15, honestly, because those are pretty dated and caused previous students a lot of headaches. But I think it's great content to understand some of the things going on here. Specifically, web scraping is important to know. So I'm going to leave that to your own discretion to go find. You can still watch the lectures, no problem, but coding along just gets to be a little bit of an issue. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm taking the section 13, 14 in week 13, the section 14 and 15 in week 14, and I'm removing them, and I'm moving up the graphical user interface. So we're going to cover that for 3 weeks. And the last 2 weeks of the semester, we will do the class, the OOP concepts. So we'll have 2 weeks of that right at the end. And then what I think I'm going to do, and I appreciate your feedback on this if you have any, is the reason I thought moving it up would be good. It would give those students, because generally the idea is that you take your Dev 1 and you build a graphical user interface for that. But it would give those students an opportunity give all of you an opportunity to work on this a little before the end of the semester. And then at the end, as we introduce the idea of writing classes, right, I think I'm going to make it your choice to take your graphical program and make it OO compliant, OOP, right, or class-based. So anyway, that's my thinking. And I'm going to redo the content so it will look different. I will release possibly even into week 13 before I head out to break, just in case you want to look at that. And that's it. Okay, so boom. So getting back to the topic. So I started working on my Dev 1 current version this semester. And if you haven't heard me say it, I think it's a little worth repeating, because I learn the reason I find development work 3 in this class weighing 50% of the grade, the reason I do that is how important I feel this is, because it to me is really when the learning, the knowledge, all of it comes together, and I learn as well, which is honestly part of what I enjoy, because if I deep in my knowledge, I hope I can help you as well. So anyway, today what I decided to do as a step towards getting my code, because I'm taking my Dev 0 code that I started with, and I'm increasing the number of inputs that I'm going to take. And in this time, as based on our requirements for Dev 1, I'll be writing that charging data, I'm going to call them entries, into a JSON file. Now, the way I done it in the video you guys watched last week was I showed you how I did my RPS, game my rock, scissors, paper, writing it to a text file, which, by the way, you can totally do, right? You don't have to do what I'm about to show you. But it is good just to see an example, and I wanted to find one, and I actually found a really nice tutorial online, but I ended up having to do a little bit of work to get it to go, and this is just a code example that they showed, so I'm going to walk through it with DevTools so that you know. Okay, if there's any questions so far, I'd love to see that in the reply. Okay, so I'm going to move over to VS Code. All right, so what I have here is I have a file on my local system called entries.json, and it contains, and notice how this is set up. So this is an data dictionary. Sorry if I call it object, I'm used to that. And then we have the first key on that is actually an array. So its larger outside format is an object, which has inside of it, its first key is a list, sorry, of then data dictionaries inside. So what this is going to do, and I ended up, and this you saw in my code, and I think Isaac and I had a conversation about this as well, is figuring out how you want to tell the system how to open your file can be a challenge. I've found this out on, and I should give the reference here, that's actually important, but I found it, and I will put a link. If you want to see this code example, let me know. But I found this example out on Stack Overflow, where you take the path absolute for the file name of the Python file, but then you split off you call the absolute to get that long path name, and then you split it so that you have the file name and the dir name. Now, in my case, and for most of us, we only need the file name. So let me go ahead and set my breakpoint right after the imports and go ahead and run this just to walk you through the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and run my file. Right. So, and again, and by the way, you want to get this experience before you come into dev. Okay. The last thing I am going to say today is about PEP 8. If you're not doing it, you need to do it, because I'm not going to make you be 100% PEP 8 compliant, but at least 75. And I think I'll update the instructions for that. All right. So I'll step into this. That's my import. Now I'm just setting my, in this case, it shows a directory name. So it actually gives that absolute directory name. And it breaks it apart from the file name, because this is the file name of the Python. And then what I do here is I just set what I'm telling it, this is my actual JSON file, okay? And then I have a function here that I'll call in a minute, so I'll come back to that. And then now this is one of the things I would change, is I would put this off in a function somewhere, but for now I just got it running. And it says with this file open, so it's opening that JSON file, and by the way, I had to import a JSON here. And so I open that entry file, because these are my charging entries, as a JSON file, okay? So then what I do is I say data, and you run this load. The idea, because what you're doing is serializing. If you've never heard that term, it's basically saying the way this data exists on the file system is not the way Python wants it. So you have to serialize that data, right? And so you do that step, and actually it might be this step, you do that. And so now I create a temporary file, and I call it, give me all those entries in here, okay? And so then what it does is I set up the new entry that I'm going to, in this case, add. And this, you'll see it here as the append, okay? So I just set up the structure of my new entry. I want date, I want location, I want miles and battery, and miles after charge. So you can see this is a data dictionary format. And so what we're going to do is we're going to now, after we just set that up, okay, so at this point, it's defined the Y as that data dictionary. It's good to go. And now it's going to append it, right, to a temp. So sorry, temp, that temporary file up here. It's going to append that entry. Cool. So we're actually, at this point, we've appended it. Now we're going to write, right? So we're actually, because this data is setting out on the global space, I'm passing it specifically, but I could have probably not done that. And then, so I'm going to run this function. And what this function is going to do is with this file open, right? So with open, meaning I've got it open, right? I'm going to change the attribute to write, and I'm just going to say as file. And then what this does, and this basically says now it clears, then you can see it cleared that file. And now it's going to dump into there the new one where I'm passing this data, right? Because where I'm updating this, because it's basically saying, I'm going to read all of them. I'm going to append this into it, and then I'm going to pass it into the write. And then the write first clears that and then rewrites that by dumping that data, that file name, and it does the indentions, which is nice. Okay. So then and I'm done. That's it. Okay. So that's the example. And again, you do not have to use JSON. I'm going to use JSON in mine because it's a better structure that allows more flexibility. And in mine, I want to be able to get some of that summary data. That's part of what you need to do for this, for the dev, is actually have some kind of summary data. And I was talking to Isaac the other day. Again, Isaac, thank you for coming by a couple of times. I appreciate that because it got me thinking and clarifying some stuff. The summary data is a really important part for me of this work because I want to be able to simply say maybe 50% of the time I charged at home, or 70% of the time I charged at home, my average cost of supercharging is this versus home, right? So I would want to have some kind of statistics, and this structure would make it much easier. Now, that's the part I'm going to have to figure out, is how to actually glean that data back from this file once I've created some entries in there. Okay. Okay. So maybe that helps. If you want, here, matter of fact, let me show you where I got the example. Was actually here. If you search YouTube for Python JSON list dictionary, it's how to append a JSON file in Python. I had to modify their file a little bit, or their code, to make it work on my system, and it's mostly because of that stubborn little thing of opening files. Okay. So come back up to here. The one thing we haven't really talked too much about, and I am now in the firm camp of PEP 8 because I really like having that ability, that linter. So a linter is a part of the editor. In this case, we're just telling VS Code, hey, turn on our linter. And in this case, we're telling it we want to use a PEP 8 standard. So what it does is it points out places in my code as soon as I write it that are not PEP 8 compliant. Matter of fact, I only have one, and here I have to figure out, it's like, what? I got to go through and figure out. I think it's because, and if you read this, it wants me to, when I'm doing this open, and this is good practice we've learned about before, is to do a try, except block. Makes more sense. And I think that's actually what that's saying in that case. But if I was to pull up, just FYI, my rock, scissors, paper game, which I did not write in PEP 8, it's like, holy mac, right? But it's not that hard to fix it, right? And I just like getting used to writing in this style. And let me say this. For our Dev 1, I put write PEP 8. Remember, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, so I'm bringing it back around to your awareness, is that you don't have to be 100% because there may be some, but I'd like what's acceptable, right? I almost hate to put a percentage on it because the truth is you should try to have it be 100%. It's just formatting things that make your code more clean and more adherent to the principles of Python, which, if you haven't heard this term Pythonic, it's kind of a way to think like Python or write like, and it's like a style that people that write in Python who write good practices use. So I appreciate this suggestion, and I know it was from Isaac. I have two Isaacs in here. Which one? Tell me which one it was that suggested this standard that I'm now using and I'm making as part of the requirement for this. And I said it right here. Oh, that's you have to, part of your code review will be doing using debugger on your side, and then using PEP 8's coding standards. And these, right? Again, I'm not gonna, if you've never fixed any of them, okay, I'll probably mark off a little of that, but attempt to do it. And if you only have 2 or 3, not a big deal, meaning 2 or 3 issues in there. The other way you can see this is when you look in, and by the way, that was in my RPS game, all of those, right? So if I pull back this file, and then you can see by going down into problems, I only have 1 issue. Maybe that 1 issue is not what I thought it was, which was here. Okay, is that white space? Is that the reason? Oh my God, that was the reason. See? Relatively easy to fix. Anyway, have a great break. Enjoy whatever comes your way in life or that you create or whatever. It's beautiful weather. I said this in my code review session sign up. I'm going to be mostly offline. I'm actually going to be doing some fun stuff out in the world. I am doing to be mobile coding though, because I've got to code up the example, finish my example for this, unless I get it done today, which is a possibility. Anyway, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of whatever you do, and I will see you after break.